Sarah, after 20 years, we're going with younger talent, Monica announced between bites of her grilled salmon. Security will watch you clear your office. I stared at the severance package she had slid across the table, as casually as if it were the dessert menu. 20 years of dedication at Rainmore Publishing reduced to a manila envelope. The restaurant bustled around us, oblivious to my world collapsing. I wish you all the best, I replied, my voice surprisingly steady. I even managed a smile. Monica looked momentarily taken aback by my composure. She had expected tears, perhaps pleading. What she didn't know was that I had suspected this was coming for months, ever since she'd been appointed as the new director and started filling the office with fresh graduates, barely old enough to remember physical books. My name is Sarah Ellison. I'm 56 years old and have spent the last 20 years of my life as the Senior Client Relations Manager at Rainmore Publishing in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm not flashy or particularly charismatic, but I'm consistent, thorough, and genuinely care about our clients and their work. In publishing, relationships are everything, and I had built solid ones with our most prestigious authors and corporate clients. The industry is changing, Sarah, Monica continued, pushing her plate away. She was 34, wore designer clothes, and had come from a digital marketing background with minimal publishing experience. We need fresh perspectives, people who understand social media and digital platforms. Of course, I nodded. Times are certainly changing. Monica dabbed her lips with her napkin, clearly relieved that I wasn't making a scene. Human Resources will contact you about your benefits. Your severance is generous. 6 months' salary. We appreciate your years of service. Service. Like I'd been a utility rather than the backbone of client retention. I took a sip of my iced tea, mentally calculating my next steps. My mortgage was nearly paid off, and my daughter had graduated college last year. I had savings, and my husband Thomas's job as an architect was stable. Financially, I could weather this storm for a while. So you're okay? Monica asked, her brow furrowing slightly. Yes, I said simply. I understand business decisions need to be made. As we walked back toward the office, Monica chatting about her plans for reorganizing my department, my phone buzzed with a text from Harold Baldwin, CEO of Baldwin Tech, one of our biggest clients. Lunch tomorrow? Need to discuss the new marketing strategy for the Tech Manual series. Little did Monica know, 3 of Rainmore's biggest clients were waiting for my call, not the company's. My relationship with Rainmore Publishing began in 2003, when I joined as an administrative assistant after a decade in customer service roles. Publishing wasn't my original career plan. I'd studied English literature with dreams of teaching, but I needed flexible hours while raising my daughter. What started as a temporary position evolved into a career I genuinely loved. Over those 20 years, I had worked my way up from answering phones to managing our most valuable client relationships. I knew the favorite coffee order of every author we published. I remembered their spouses' names, their children's birthdays, and which hotels they preferred when visiting Boston. This wasn't strategy, it was simply who I was. Baldwin Tech had been with Rainmore for 15 years, exclusively because of my attention to detail. Harold Baldwin, its founder, trusted me implicitly with their technical manuals and training materials. Harlow Imports had signed with us 7 years ago after I spent 18 months courting them, and New Summit Holdings had been our client for nearly a decade. Together, these 3 clients represented almost 40% of Rainmore's annual revenue. While Monica saw me as an aging relic taking up space that could be filled by someone younger, these clients saw me as their publishing partner, the person who ensured their materials were perfect, on time, and exactly what they envisioned. Security was indeed waiting when we returned to the office. Richard, the guard who had watched me enter the building every morning for the past 12 years, looked uncomfortable. "I'm sorry about this, Miss Ellison," he whispered as Monica stepped away to take a call. "It's okay, Richard," I assured him. "Just doing your job." My colleagues watched in stunned silence as I packed my personal items into a cardboard box, family photos, my collection of fountain pens, the small jade plant I'd kept alive since my first day. Some looked away, embarrassed. Others approached with whispered promises to stay in touch. Jessica Adams, my younger colleague who had joined the company 5 years ago, looked particularly distraught. "This isn't right," she hissed, helping me pack my books. "Everyone knows you're the reason half our major clients stay with us." I squeezed her hand. "Things change, Jessica. Companies evolve." "What will you do?" she asked. I smiled, the first genuine one since lunch. "I'll figure something out." As Richard escorted me to the elevator, box in hand, I caught a glimpse of Monica speaking animatedly to the young woman I assumed would be my replacement. She looked about 25, energetic and eager to prove herself. I didn't blame her. This was her opportunity, just as Rainmore had once been mine. What Monica didn't realize was that opportunities could work both ways. On the drive home, I allowed myself 15 minutes of grief. 20 years deserved at least that. I thought about the authors whose books I had helped shepherd into the world, the relationships I had nurtured, the countless late nights ensuring deadlines were met. Then I pulled into my driveway, took a deep breath, and locked those feelings away. Thomas was working from home that day, designing renovations for a historical building downtown. When he saw me walk through the door at 2 p.m, cardboard box in hand, he immediately understood. "They finally did it?" he asked, rising from his desk. I nodded, setting the box down. "Monica took me to lunch. Apparently they're going with younger talent." Thomas pulled me into a hug. After 30 years of marriage, he knew when I needed comfort and when I needed space. "Their loss," he said simply. "Maybe," I replied, pulling back to look at him, "but possibly my gain." That evening, I made 3 phone calls, not to lament my situation, but to set a new course. The first was to Harold Baldwin. We had developed a friendship over the years that extended beyond our professional relationship. He had even attended my daughter's wedding last summer. "They did what?" he exclaimed after I explained the situation. "Sarah, you're the only reason we've stayed with Rainmore all these years. Their production quality is good, but without you managing the process." He trailed off. "I appreciate your saying that, Harold," I said, "but I understand business decisions." "This isn't business. It's short-sightedness," he replied firmly. "Let's meet tomorrow. I have some thoughts." My second call was to Victoria Harlow, CEO of Harlow Imports. Her reaction was similar to Harold's, disbelief followed by calculation. "We have 3 projects scheduled with Rainmore this quarter," she said, "but our contract renewal is coming up next month. Let's talk before I sign anything." The third call was to Robert Summers at New Summit Holdings, the most reserved of the 3. His response surprised me the most. "Interesting timing," he said. "We've actually been considering bringing our publishing in-house. We just weren't sure how to manage the workflow." He paused. "Would you be open to discussing opportunities, Sarah? Not just for our existing projects, but potentially something more permanent?" By the time I went to bed that night, I had lunch meetings scheduled with all 3 clients over the next 3 days. I wasn't plotting revenge. I was simply exploring options that were suddenly, unexpectedly available to me. The following morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. While I was packing my office, Jessica had slipped me a USB drive containing my contact lists and project templates. Nothing proprietary or confidential, just the tools I had created during my tenure. "You built these," she had whispered. "They're yours." I wasn't starting from scratch. I had 20 years of experience, an extensive network, and now, a newfound freedom to reimagine my professional identity. As I prepared for my lunch with Harold, I realized Monica had actually done me a favor. She had forced me to consider possibilities I would never have explored otherwise. The next day, I arrived at Grendel's Bistro 15 minutes early for my lunch with Harold. I had chosen this restaurant deliberately. It was just 2 blocks from Rainmore's offices, and Monica frequently hosted client meetings here. A small, petty part of me hoped she might see me with Harold, but the strategic part knew appearing confident and in demand was the better revenge. Harold arrived promptly at noon, his imposing 6'4" frame drawing attention as he navigated through the tables. At 62, he still worked 14-hour days and expected everyone around him to match his energy. "Sarah," he greeted me with a warm embrace. "You look well for someone who just had their career unceremoniously upended." "I've always believed in looking forward, not back," I replied as we sat down. After ordering, Harold leaned forward. "Before we discuss your situation, I have news. Monica called me this morning." I raised an eyebrow but wasn't surprised. "And?" "She introduced herself as the new client relations director and wanted to schedule a meeting to align on our vision moving forward." Harold's impression of Monica's voice was uncannily accurate, and I couldn't help but smile. "She mentioned they've assigned someone named Bethany to our account. Said she has innovative digital strategies that would revolutionize our approach." "Bethany Wilson," I nodded. 26, marketing degree from NYU. Smart girl, but she's been with Rainmore for 8 months and has never worked on technical publications. Harold's eyebrows shot up. "You know her?" "I make it my business to know everyone who might impact my clients," I said simply. Our food arrived, and Harold waited until the server had left before continuing. "Here's the situation, Sarah. Baldwin Tech has 3 textbooks, 5 technical manuals, and our entire training curriculum scheduled with Rainmore this year. The contract is worth approximately $2 million. I nodded. I had negotiated that contract myself last year. "I have no intention of working with someone who doesn't understand our materials," Harold continued. "But I also can't afford production delays. Our new engineering program launches in September." "I understand," I said, feeling a twinge of loyalty to Rainmore despite everything. "Bethany might surprise you, and the production team at Rainmore is excellent." Harold waved his hand dismissively. "The production team follows your project plans, Sarah. You created the style guides, the workflows, the quality control processes. You're the one who understands what we need." He paused. "So here's my proposal. I want to hire you as a consultant to manage our publishing projects." I nearly choked on my water. "You want to what?" "Hire you directly. We'll still use Rainmore for production, at least for now, but you'll be our representative. You'll manage everything as you always have, but you'll be working for Baldwin Tech, not Rainmore." My mind raced. "Harold, I appreciate the offer, but Rainmore might see that as—" "I don't care how Rainmore sees it," Harold interrupted. "They're the ones who decided you were expendable. I'm just responding to market conditions." He smiled. "And I'll pay you 30% more than your Rainmore salary, plus benefits." As I considered Harold's offer, my phone buzzed with a text from Victoria Harlow. "Meeting with new Rainmore rep tomorrow. Not impressed with her preparation. Very eager to speak with you." Then another text arrived, this one from Robert Summers. "Rainmore called. New person doesn't know anything about our specialized formatting requirements. Still on for Thursday?" I looked up at Harold, who was watching me with a knowing smile. "Seems I'm not the only one having second thoughts about Rainmore's new direction," he said. The realization of what was happening, and what could happen next, was both thrilling and terrifying. I had never intended to compete with my former employer, but they had set these events in motion. Now I had a choice to make. "Let me think about your offer," I told Harold, "and let's see what Victoria and Robert have to say." My meeting with Victoria Harlow the following day was even more encouraging. We met at her office in a renovated textile mill overlooking the Charles River. Harlow Imports specialized in European home furnishings and published elaborate seasonal catalogs and design books that required meticulous attention to detail. "I just had the most frustrating call with someone named Bethany," Victoria said as soon as I sat down. "She couldn't tell me whether they could match the paper quality we used last season, and she had no idea about our color calibration requirements. Those are production details, I said diplomatically. Bethany's background is in marketing, so she might still be learning the technical aspects. Victoria fixed me with a pointed look. Sarah, you and I both know that in publishing, the technical aspects are everything. Our catalog goes to interior designers who can spot a half-shade difference in color from across the room. She slid a folder across her desk. Inside was a proposal similar to Harold's, a consulting contract for me to manage Harlow's publishing projects, with a compensation package that made my eyes widen. I had our legal team draft this after you called, Victoria explained. We've been considering bringing more control in-house for a while. This seems like the perfect opportunity. I closed the folder, feeling simultaneously flattered and overwhelmed. Victoria, I'm honored, but I haven't decided what direction I'm taking yet. Of course, she nodded, but I wanted you to know that options exist. She paused. Options that value your expertise appropriately. That evening, I received an unexpected call from Jessica Adams, my former colleague at Rainmore. Sarah, I probably shouldn't be telling you this, she whispered. But things are chaotic here. Baldwin Tech is threatening to put their projects on hold, and Harlow Imports is suddenly demanding to approve every stage of production personally. I tried to keep my voice neutral. That sounds challenging. Challenging? It's a disaster, Jessica continued. Bethany is completely overwhelmed. She spent an hour crying in the bathroom today after Robert Summers tore apart her production schedule for New Summit's training manuals. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, genuinely feeling for Bethany. None of this was her fault. Monica called an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning, Jessica added. The executive team looks worried. I think they're finally realizing what they've lost. After hanging up, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the 2 contract offers before me. Thomas came in and placed a cup of tea at my elbow. What's going through that brilliant mind of yours? He asked, sitting beside me. I'm considering my options, I replied. Harold and Victoria have both offered me consulting contracts. If Robert does the same tomorrow. Thomas took my hand. Sarah, for 20 years I've watched you put Rainmore's needs above your own. You've worked weekends, taken calls during our vacations, stayed up all night to meet impossible deadlines. You've earned this opportunity. But starting my own consulting business at 56? I shook my head. It seems risky. Riskier than trusting a company that discarded you after 20 years of loyalty? He countered. He was right, of course. The next morning, I woke up with a decision forming. Before I could second-guess myself, I called Harold and Victoria to accept their offers, with one condition. I wanted to wait until after my meeting with Robert Summers before finalizing anything. As I prepared for that meeting, my phone rang. It was Monica. Sarah, she began, her voice unusually conciliatory. I was hoping we could meet to discuss a few ongoing projects. It seems there are some transition issues we didn't anticipate. I'm sorry to hear that, I replied calmly, but I'm afraid I'm booked with meetings for the next few days. Sarah, Monica's voice took on an edge of desperation. This is important. Baldwin and Harlow are making unreasonable demands, and we could really use your insight. My insight? I couldn't keep the irony from my voice. I thought you were looking for fresh perspectives. There was a long pause before Monica spoke again. Perhaps we acted hastily. I'd like to discuss the possibility of bringing you back as a consultant during this transition period. And there it was, the acknowledgement, however indirect, that they had made a mistake. It should have felt like victory, but instead, I felt only clarity. I'll check my calendar and get back to you, I said, and ended the call. My meeting with Robert Summers took place at New Summit's headquarters in a gleaming downtown skyscraper. Unlike Harold's warmth or Victoria's directness, Robert was calculating and precise, which made his proposal all the more surprising. We don't want to hire you as a consultant, Sarah, he said after preliminary pleasantries. We want to bring you on as our Director of Publishing Operations. I blinked, trying to process this unexpected turn. A full-time position? Robert nodded. We publish over 30 training manuals, corporate reports, and marketing materials each year. We've been contracting with Rainmore because we lacked someone with your expertise internally. Now that you're available. He trailed off meaningfully. I'm flattered, Robert, but I've already tentatively accepted consulting arrangements with Baldwin Tech and Harlow Imports. I suspected as much, he replied, sliding a prospectus across the table. Which is why our offer includes the opportunity to build a publishing department from the ground up. You'd have full autonomy, a team of 5 to start, and the freedom to continue consulting for select clients as long as there's no conflict of interest. The salary figure at the bottom of the page made me catch my breath. It was nearly double what I'd made at Rainmore. This is extremely generous, I managed. It's market rate for someone with your skills and connections, Robert corrected. Rainmore was underpaying you significantly. As I left New Summit's offices, my phone buzzed with another call from Monica. I let it go to voicemail. Minutes later, Jessica texted me. Executive board called Monica in. Looks serious. Baldwin Tech officially put all projects on hold pending review of relationship. This was moving faster than I had anticipated. I needed time to think, to weigh my options carefully. I spent the afternoon in the Boston Public Garden, watching tourists paddle around in swan boats while I considered 3 distinct paths: becoming an independent consultant, joining New Summit, or entertaining Rainmore's apparent reconsideration. By evening, I had made my decision. I called Harold and Victoria first, confirming my acceptance of their consulting contracts. Then I called Robert to discuss a modified arrangement. I would join New Summit as their Director of Publishing Operations, but with the explicit agreement that I could maintain my consulting relationships with Baldwin and Harlow. That works for us, Robert said, sounding pleased. When can you start? I'll need 2 weeks to set up my home office and formalize my consulting business, I replied. Perfect. We'll have everything ready. The last call I made was to Monica, who answered on the first ring. Sarah, thank you for calling back, she said, relief evident in her voice. We'd like to bring you in tomorrow to discuss a new role we're creating, Senior Client Advisor, reporting directly to me. The board has approved a significant compensation increase. That's very generous, Monica, I said. But I've accepted a position with New Summit Holdings, and I'll be consulting independently for Baldwin Tech and Harlow Imports. The silence on the other end was deafening. You're working for our clients? Monica finally stammered. With your clients, I corrected gently. They'll still be using Rainmore for production, at least for now. I'll just be managing the projects from the client side instead of yours. But that's... Monica stopped herself. Good business? I suggested. Adapting to changing market conditions? Finding fresh perspectives? Another long pause. The board will want to speak with you, she said finally. I'm available next week, I replied. Though I should mention that my consulting rates are significantly higher than my former salary. As I ended the call, I felt no malice toward Monica or Rainmore, only a strange sense of gratitude. Being fired had forced me to recognize my true value in an industry where relationships and expertise were the ultimate currency. Sometimes the best revenge isn't plotting and scheming. It's simply rising. 1 month later, I sat in my newly established home office, surrounded by organized project files and a state-of-the-art computer setup provided by New Summit. On my walls hung framed covers of publications I had shepherded through production over the years, a visual reminder of my expertise and legacy. My consulting business, Ellison Publishing Services, was officially registered, with Baldwin Tech and Harlow Imports as my first clients. My position at New Summit was going well. I had already assembled a talented team and was establishing workflows that would elevate their corporate publications. The doorbell rang, and Thomas showed a visitor into my office, Monica. Thank you for seeing me, she said, looking uncomfortable in my home space. Of course, I replied, gesturing to a chair. How can I help you? Monica looked different. The polished confidence had given way to a harried appearance. I'll be direct, Sarah. We're struggling without you. Baldwin and Harlow are threatening to pull all future projects from Rainmore. New Summit has already moved their fall catalog in-house. The board is concerned. I nodded, waiting for her to continue. They've asked me to offer you a senior position. Executive Vice President of Client Relations. Full creative control over your department, a seat on the executive board, and... She hesitated. A significant ownership stake in the company. I considered her offer for a moment. Just 6 weeks ago, this would have seemed like a dream promotion. I'm flattered, I said sincerely. But I've discovered something interesting about myself, Monica. I actually prefer the path I'm on now. We can match whatever you're making, she pressed. I smiled. It's not about the money. For the first time in 20 years, I'm building something that's truly mine. The work I'm doing at New Summit is creative and challenging, and my consulting clients value my contribution explicitly. Monica looked deflated. So there's nothing we can offer? I'm afraid not, I replied. But I'm happy to provide recommendations for my replacement. Jessica Adams has tremendous potential. Monica nodded in resignation and stood to leave. At the door, she turned back. You know, when I let you go, I thought I was making a bold decision that would modernize the company. I never imagined that I would create an opportunity from it. I finished for her. Exactly, she said softly. Lesson learned. 6 months later, I hosted a small reception at my home to celebrate the launch of New Summit's redesigned corporate publishing program. Harold Baldwin and Victoria Harlow were there, along with my team from New Summit and a few former colleagues from Rainmore who had since joined my growing consultancy. Jessica Adams was among them, now the client relations director at Rainmore after Monica's abrupt departure. The board had decided they needed someone who understood the value of relationships over flashy marketing strategies. I still can't believe how everything unfolded, Jessica said as we stood on my patio, watching the autumn leaves fall. When Monica fired you, everyone thought it was the end of your career. I laughed lightly. Sometimes being underestimated is the greatest advantage. Rainmore's still recovering, she admitted. We lost almost 30% of our client base. The board finally understands that in publishing, relationships are everything. And how are you finding your new role? I asked. Challenging, she smiled. But I have an excellent mentor who taught me everything I know about client relations. Thomas joined us, placing a gentle hand on my back. Your guests are asking for a speech, he said with a grin. I had never been one for public speaking, but as I looked around at the gathering, colleagues who had become friends, clients who had become partners, I felt a surge of confidence that would have been foreign to me a year ago. I won't give a speech, I said, raising my glass, but I will offer a toast to unexpected opportunities, to valuing expertise, and to the power of relationships. The group raised their glasses and Harold called out, and to Sarah Ellison, who taught us all that the most powerful response to underestimation is excellence. As laughter and conversation resumed, I took a moment to appreciate how completely my professional life had transformed. What had begun as a devastating dismissal had evolved into something far more fulfilling than I could have imagined. Sometimes, the greatest revenge is simply becoming the person you were always meant to be. I now understood that the true power was never in the title or the office. It was in the relationships I had built and the value I had created. My journey from dismissed employee to respected industry leader was the most satisfying revenge of all.